This is a special meeting of the Darien Board of Education Communications Committee. We do not have a next meeting scheduled, I believe. We need to get our next schedule together. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Adley.
Morning, everyone. So this is relatively a brief agenda this morning. And the first agenda item is to look at some of the themes and follow-up questions that would come from the focus groups. So we are going to do the focus groups in the fall. And from the last meeting at the committee level, we discussed what would be perhaps some of those themes. Could we pull some of those together? So these are not completely exclusive or completely exhausted in terms of anybody has any other suggestions that would like to be explored. And I'm assuming between now and then we would sort of come together again for clarification around how we're going to frame that. But typically a focus group would, in addition to sort of looking at the general sort of what are the strengths, challenges and opportunities around communication, I would think whoever's facilitating it would do that in general. But these are the other, morning, Jill. But these are the other general themes that came out of the survey feedback that perhaps the facilitator could prod a wee bit further. So they're listed there. If you want me just to name them, I'll just name them, just to name them a little bit. The social media presence came out. So the limited sort of social media for board or district communications. I would say probably also just the coordination and the coherence of that, or lack of coherence of it, would be rolled in there. Why is this? And would parents engage in social media if there was a larger presence, a kind of coherent presence? The community members like to hear more from staff about staff and students. So we could follow up with like, what are some of those examples that you'd like to hear about? And how would you like these experiences communicated? It could be at board meetings, it could be at more public events, it could be through media, hard copy or otherwise. The community did not find the district's website particularly accessible or engaging. So specifically just getting some examples around that. Certainly we would have our own insight into that, but I would like to get some of the public's insight into that. I'd like to hear more about working directly with administration and the board. So what does that really mean, and how might we accomplish that? Is that something we would like to do? What would be the vision for that? I put down here that I think that we collapsed a couple of feedback as to other departments or topics that people would like to hear more about. It may well be, for instance, from the new assistant superintendent for curriculum could be an example. But there may be other areas that people would like to hear more about and that we maybe don't touch upon or communicate as regularly as people might like. The student information system, has come up several times. So just from a user point of view, what are those difficulties? Again, we have insight into some of this, but I think there was just getting firsthand experiences from people as to what their experiences are would be helpful there. And this one comes up that the board and the district administration are not open and transparent. Well, what does that really mean? And also in hearing dissenting opinions, what does that really mean? And what would they like to see, whether it's feasible, not feasible, agreeable or not agreeable? What would it mean to be more transparent if that was one of the concerns? So those are a couple of things that Marge in particular and I pulled out from the survey. There's others that can be added, obviously, either sooner or later, but those are maybe things that could be explored a wee bit deeper.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I have a few thoughts I can start, or if anybody wants to share some.
Go
ahead. Go ahead.
One section of the survey was related to staff feedback. And so I realized this was focused on the community, but do you have a plan for get some on staff or implement some on staff?
We thought we would get your feedback on these
Okay.
and then apply them to staff.
Okay, perfect. And then, I just want to also take into account that our constituents go beyond parents, and a lot of people who, for instance, I'm going to be an empty nester within a year or two, but I'm still going to want to see, what's going on within the school district. Again, they have different interest levels, but I think it's important that we, tailor some of the communications that might be in the social media to, those folks that don't have children in the district, but still have an interest in, to highlight some of the success stories and the accomplishments and that sort of thing beyond the parents. I just,
That's a good valid point. If we were to do a newsletter article, for instance, it wouldn't just be targeted towards the parents, right? I do think that's an important valid point.
because, you want them to feel like they're stakeholders,
Yep.
even if they don't have kids in the system. So, go ahead.
I'll just add to that. I think we did see some comments where people expressed an interest in hearing about DPS news in general, whether or not you may only have an elementary age child, but you'd like to know that there's the Achievers Fair, I'm making things up, going on at the high school or something. If there's a place to get kind of a more centralized overall read on what's going on in the district, I think there might be an appetite for that we could explore in focus groups.
Well, like plays and homecoming and
Yep.
FCF championships are examples of things that you have to know sometimes.
Right. And then I think what the comments were saying is people were wishing that they knew that those were things that happen at the high school. So even if you have a fifth grader, maybe you're thinking, oh, Model UN is something my fifth grader will probably be interested in or might be interested in. And you can start thinking about those things sooner.
Sorry. Yeah. Hopefully I wasn't not listening intently. Can you just synthesize what like what's that specifically?
I think we explore an appetite for a more general Darien Public Schools communication, whether that's a place on the website or a newsletter or something that could be informative for parents of kids at any level and people who are no longer parents or aren't involved in the district, but like to know what's going on in their town. Is that capture? You want to add anything else? Or you want me to
I have a
jump
few
in?
comments. Just looking through the questions, they're prioritized to me. What I really want to understand is what people want to hear.
Yes.
I do want to hear how they want to hear it, but to me, that's a little bit less important only because I think we may find that there are best practices as we go out and do more work. And so it's good to hear I use social media, but it may not be the best place for us to talk about a particular curricular development, while it might be the best place for homecoming. So I'm not expecting focus groups to prioritize in that way. So I want to make sure I'm asking that when we run the focus groups, that we really focus on what type of information people want. And secondarily would be some of the things about how they might want to see it.
Content versus delivery mechanisms.
Yes.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
The other piece that jumped out at me is we have the way the questions are written, it's the board, the district. I think we may want to think a little bit about how we present because, for example, in the finance committee yesterday, one of the things that came up is I don't know about intramurals at the middle school.
Yeah.
So I think there's building level information. I think that there's central office level information, and then there's kind of how the board works and what it does. And those are difficult things at times for our community to parse, but I think this is a good time to start using language that appropriately reflects what those organizations do and don't do. And also because we do want people following the chain of communication, again, thinking about, okay, as we ask questions, how do we make sure that people understand how it already works? So again, I know we're just trying to draw things out of people,
No,
but
that's
I think
good.
those are different cohorts.
So whatever it is we're talking about in general, you're thinking about, can we clarify using a common language, which level of organization or?
Yes, yes. So, there might be a series of follow-up questions, if you're talking about information from let's talk about elementary school for a second. If you're talking about, when the next Hinley happening is coming, who do you want to hear that from? Who do you think you're hearing that from? Because we just have so many different, and I think if we just group it too highly into board and district, it's just a lot for people to parse. So I think you might just need to think about how to draw information out of people about the different kinds of information they receive and help them distinguish between what types of groups might offer it.
It's good feedback. Thank you. Helpful.
I just wanted, you think you mentioned it earlier, the new assistant superintendent, I think, also offers an awesome opportunity for communication as she introduces herself to, the community. I think, she will probably garner some feedback through her efforts to, make relationships through this community as well. So that's another opportunity for feedback.
Dennis?
Yeah, I have a specific question on Aspen and the student information systems. These are third-party software that we purchase. So I'm a little, I don't know, trepidatious, maybe it's the right word, of what are the difficulties and what function when we're asking things that they would like to see enhanced. How much ability do we have to do that?
Well, yes, so it's clearly something like that to, and maybe even others perhaps would have budgetary ramifications and so on. So we have to have that discussion with contextually understanding that even if people did want something different or otherwise, there may, A, it may not be supported if it comes to a final decision, and B, there may be budgetary implications or otherwise. Just the pragmatic nature of that, we are looking at a different student information system. Just we happen to be doing that anyway. So, but your point is a valid point in terms of like how if people want something, what's our capacity to deliver in that, either because we want to or because there's restrictions or other.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. Just maybe in the focus group, just put it out that this is not something that's developed by
list, yes.
By us, so we don't build expectations that all of this can happen, and because it may not be available, as you said. So,
But I think with this and all of these, what the idea is to understand better what isn't working well for people, and to whether that's about Aspen or social media presence or anything else, to get a little deeper on why they're not satisfied or what it would take to be more satisfied, so we can assess if there are ways that we can improve in those areas.
Fair.
It's going to be timely feedback too, as you are looking at new software as well.
Right. Did you have anything else, Dennis, at this point?
No, I just agree with Jill's point of that we need to, the focus group has what their priorities are and things like that. I agree with that part.
Thank you. One kind of general, and I think we all know this, but I do think we have to be careful of just hearing that people want more, because probably for as many people say they want more, there are the same number of people saying too much already. So a caution to all of us. And also, which is kind of obvious going into focus groups, but the need to interpret what we're hearing and dig to understand better. For example, the point about topics you'd like to receive more info on, as we talked about in our last meeting, sometimes things are happening that people might be missing. So let's just make sure that we explore those things to determine if there's really something absent or if it's a breakdown in communication, because I think that's what we're trying to shore up. I think on the social media piece, I would just be careful. I think we say here, are parents engaging with social media? I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that most parents are engaging in social media in some degree in their lives. So I think they're engaging with social media. I don't know that they're engaging with us or the district via social media. But I think it's worth understanding how they use it, because I agree with Jill. I don't know that that's the place that we're putting out curriculum information, but it'd be a really handy place to see don't forget today at 5 at central office, there's a new discussion on X, Y, and Z. So if we could understand better how that works in people's lives, we might find more ways to use it relevantly and helpfully. Dennis, did you put your hand up? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a point about information, Julie, and I think that, we were discussing that some 5th graders may want information about the high school, and so I'm thinking that that's an opt-in to get that information, hopefully, and not just a dispense to everyone. But I also think parents may, or community members may want an opt-out button to not get certain information. And to your point, I think that and I think Jill made it the last time, is that, you get a notification from your teacher, your homeroom parent, your principal, the district, the you know, and you just don't know which one is important or not. So maybe parents may say, I only want my local news and I don't want the bigger news. I don't know, but I think to give parents the choice to opt in and out of certain communication may be beneficial.
Mhm. I think that's a good point.
So, sorry,
Yeah,
Julie,
go ahead.
just jumping, but piggybacking on that, I think what we're sort of driving at and what is these questions are driven from the survey, but maybe a question that kind of drives at, how do you feel about the volume that you get? Is it effective? Can you find what you want? Understanding that we do have many different cohorts, and that sort of opens the door to talk about the different bodies who communicate, and that they have, all a slightly different scope or purpose. Taking some time to assess that, because while a dearth of communication shows up in the survey, I think we are aware at the same time that we all receive actually quite a few communications from the school if you aggregate it. And we saw that in the spreadsheet. Yeah.
And Jill, maybe that's a better point than I was trying to make. I think what I'm trying to get to is it seemed like some parents were saying that, they just get, especially with the attachments and things, is they're not able to file them properly, to retrieve them at a later time if they want to do so. So maybe a question in a focus group is, how can we better help you be able to file information to be retrieved later, or something along those lines, because it just comes out as a general blast and you're like, oh, I had an email about that. When was it? Which day? I don't remember who sent it. Maybe there's a way we can help them. I'm not sure how to do that, but maybe there's people who are in the community who can help us do that.
Mm-hmm. Marge, are you taking notes on this, or do you want board members to email just what they're
taking notes?
because I want to capture make sure I'm
Yeah.
capturing people's questions. And if there's other questions that members have after this, you can just email us.
Sure.
Sorry,
Sorry, kind of adding to that, I did also want to ask if we could probe timing. There was a fair amount of commenting about getting stuff at the end of the week, getting stuff at the beginning of the week, getting Dr. Adley's email the same day that you get the principal's email. It was like overload on one day. Could we manage the messaging better? If there's anything to explore there. The website, I think we should explore in focus groups. I personally think that might become a bigger project. We ask and need a lot out of our website. It's a huge clearinghouse of information and only becoming bigger and bigger. And I think the interface of it is challenging for people, it sounds like. So I definitely want to look at that in focus groups, but I do think that might become something that we need to spin off into kind of a project of its own, honestly, because it's a huge critical piece of how we provide information and interaction with our community.
I think that dovetails with what I was saying, that I think really what we want to get from parents is sort of the look and the feel, not so much the mechanism, because I think that's work that has to be done by people with more expertise.
Right. Yes, that's well put. Thank you. I agree. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was this idea of how we kind of onboard new families or families transitioning to new schools. And this might work in conjunction with kind of a broader communication tool for the district. I'm not sure, but we did have some comments about when you're starting a new school or when you arrive in this district, it's hard to know where to look for the stuff, where to get the right information. It might be helpful to hear in focus groups from families who moved in or have made transition from elementary to middle to high school, how their experience was in getting themselves acclimated and up to speed and finding all of those necessary resources and information sources.
I agree with that being important, an important time. It's such a small town. People feel that, by the time you have your third, you already know all the ropes, but definitely you forget every time you're a first how hard it is. At the same time, maybe we could also broaden that and just say, are there points in time when you have found it more challenging to find the relevant communications? Because changing buildings is a particular point in time, and I think an important one. but there might be other points of entry and exit that are much smaller that might actually appear with frequency if we probe.
I think that's helpful. Anyone else have any other thoughts on this? All right, is that helpful?
Yes.
You have to say yes.
Well,
The worst.
have to, but that was a trick question.
No, but I mean, no, that's, some of these meetings are more working meetings in some capacity, so that's why I need the feedback. So.
Yeah, thank you. I think that what you gave us to react to was incredibly helpful. So thank you.
Yes.
Which is a good segue to the draft communication goal for consideration.
So let me give you some sort of thoughts behind this. On Tuesday evening, I'll be bringing 5 goals to the board. Board doesn't have to choose 5 goals, and choose any of you want, right? But there are 5 goals that I'll be bringing forward. The nature of the goals, the structure of them is around the strategic work and the name of the goal, the strategic work, and the measurement. I will tell you, for the 5 goals, I have for strategic work for each and 4 measurements for each. I do not have this, right? So this is put down to try and cover most thoughts, most areas, or areas that we thought that the board might be interested or not. If the goal itself is applicable, well, if you want to change the goal, you change the goal, but I'm not advocating all of these strategies. I'm not all advocating all. In fact, I would strongly encourage us to reduce those. I didn't want to reduce them. I thought I would get feedback today. And if you said to me, well, can you take the administration, can you just go and bring what you think the 4 feedbacks are, or otherwise, then that's what I'll do for the board meeting on Tuesday evening. Just a couple of things that you may think that the board goal is the general goal is the same as last year. It's not really, with a wee bit of semantic change to it. It's not just about communication, it's about actual engagement. Right. So there's a difference about, like, I think that's the difference in many ways that people are asking us, don't just, in some ways, just don't communicate with us and tell us what's going on, or at least engage with us a wee bit more. So that's specifically added to that for that particular purpose. And then thereafter that, this is going to be discussed Tuesday, the first reading. It could be that the board would want to continue it at the board retreat, facilitation around their goals, whatever number they choose at. And then again at the August 8th meeting, the decision of whether you want to facilitate as part of the board reflection process for the year, you could have that facilitated there. So that's the sort of the background. I'm just, I don't want you to think, well, you just threw a lot of stuff down there. I'm not advocating that, all that stuff, but I'm just trying to get people's initial read for the board communication goal to be proposed. And if I'll frame it whatever way this committee wants in terms of shorten it or otherwise. So that's kind of the background.
I definitely appreciate the emphasis on engagement. Thank you for pointing out the tweak there.
And on the engagement front, I think it's important to note that, we, at regular board meetings, it's very difficult to do the engagement part. But there's definitely a interest in creating forums for better engagement. Like I really do think, again, a new assistant superintendent is going to create some, but I think we as board members have to create maybe some town meetings or whatever you want to, small group meetings, so that we can react in a back and forth manner. We also heard it from the RTM on regarding kind of the budget process. We figure something out during that, but I think it's ripe for opportunity to create some events that we can actually have discussions, if you will, not just receive feedback.
I'll say that if you're asking me just like, what was your thought? Well, I'll just highlight a couple for you if you want, right? Bullet 2, because that's the work of bullet 3, which is actually, is there what you just talked about, I think, yeah. Right? And 5, 6, and 7 probably. I'm not saying that like those, I'm just giving you a general sense of if I had to collapse them. But you may have other opinions and other thoughts. So the measures can come out after that strategy. I would probably just fall out after the strategy. So the question is like, what sort of feedback do you want to consider? How much do you want me to bring to the board? Because if these are included, they're going to stand out. Why have you got all these for communication and you don't have those for other stuff?
I think these could be refined somewhat. Yeah, I think it's a lot.
It is a lot.
For example, I would immediately eliminate the bottom one. I appreciate Gabe and all that it does. But I think we're still in a fact-finding year,
Yeah, of course.
and so
Yeah.
I wouldn't prioritize that. Whereas I agree completely with a end-of-year communication survey. I think budget recommendations may or may not be valid. So,
Yeah, yes.
I don't know that I'd put it as strategic work at this time. I just think we're a little early.
If you can
On
keep
that.
going here, and
Yeah.
maybe we can get down to a couple that you think are okay, that would be very helpful.
I do think that, sorry, I'm going bottom up. I do think the policy committee work, I do think this board, we talked about it, I think this subcommittee should look at a representative sample of policies and come back to the board and say, this is what we think the policy committee should consider. So that's what I'm describing sounds a little bit different than the way it's written here. I don't think it's just a blanket go ask policy. I think this committee should lead a little bit in what types of policy we would ask everyone to consider, and if there are any specific considerations that we see from a communication standpoint. So I would keep that bullet in, but I would rewrite it to reflect this committee taking a more active role.
Okay.
We have identified from the beginning that that might be a component of this work. Where it has seek opportunities to issue shared communication with administration, I don't know that that's a specific set of
no,
strategic work. Yeah,
Great.
it may happen. I think align board meeting agenda items to board goals is important, but I don't think it belongs in this set of work. I think it probably goes under another board goal having to do with looking at how we organize ourselves, really. I was curious about increased communication on the strategic plan and portrait of a graduate, why those two specifically were highlighted. In some ways, I think that could be collapsed with some of the other celebrating staff and student experiences, unless there's something specific to either of those.
Yeah, the only thing that's in there that, and particularly the vision of the graduate, that was one of the focuses for our administrative retreat.
Mhm.
It'll be a focus for the year to make sure that we start expanding it K to 12 and
Mhm.
also even continuing at the high school, the next level of work at the high school. So that would
Okay.
be, it'll probably be most likely be my focus for convocation for the year and so on.
Okay.
That was the reason behind it for the emphasis.
So I don't think that as a communication goal, I don't think that this board
Right.
committee's identifying those as priorities. So I would say it could be that we have something like, ensure that communications align with priorities or something to that effect. Like if there are administrative things that need to be communicated, we want to make sure that communications are properly prioritizing what needs to get out. But that's sort of a measure of efficacy more than it is. I don't think this group is identifying portrait of a graduate as being a priority.
Yeah.
So I would either take that out or rewrite.
I could tell you here, just for members of the committee here, unless you think otherwise, I'm actually agreeing with these.
Yeah.
So,
I agree too.
Okay. I agree with celebrating student and staff experiences. The elementary building projects, I actually think is valid to have here because there is going to be work, and we have identified that the principals are well, let me back up. I think this will be important work, but it may go into that bigger bubble that we talk about, which is administration is going to have some things to prioritize. That might include portrait of a graduate, building projects. So I think this probably also goes in that, if we could find a higher level goal, and some of the measures would be maybe effective communication about building projects, effective communication about portrait of a graduate, for example. That's probably how I would handle that. I think where it says provide additional opportunities, I am 100% in support of the spirit of it. I just don't know if we understand yet what we're trying to do.
where's that one?
So I'm on
Number three.
provide additional in-person opportunities.
Okay.
So I'm asking the committee if we want to, is that something realistically we're going to do in the next year?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah, I
I'm
had
game for it.
I'll
I hear you.
I'll jump in on that one because I had played with that one specifically. I was playing around with trying to take these up one notch so
Yeah.
that maybe we could have fewer things capturing more
Yes.
possible
yes,
measures coming out of them. But in the end, as the year rolls out, I mean, but for here, I was playing with improved connection to and engagement among all stakeholders.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
yes.
something to that effect.
And then a measure might be,
Improve connection to and engagement among all stakeholders.
Perfect.
Connection to,
is he saying?
We can finesse that if we need to, but I was just trying to make.
Yeah.
one more time,
And
please. Improve connection.
to
Yeah.
and engagement among all stakeholders.
Is that not too similar to the actual goal itself? I'm just posing that question.
It is a little bit similar to the actual goal. But I appreciate, Julie, what you're trying to do. So
Yeah.
I think
so, I mean,
maybe we can kick that back to administration. Can you bring the strategic work up a little bit?
Well,
There.
I guess what's the problem with the bullet? What, it's too detailed?
No, I'm just saying what Jill,
No.
Oh, sorry.
I'm asking Jill, sorry.
The strategic work.
Yeah.
I just think if we put it in there, we're accountable to it. I'm 100% okay with being accountable to it, but we haven't decided, we haven't even talked about what we might do.
Okay, so instead of provide additional opportunities, explore,
Maybe.
That could work.
then you're not beholden to each one of these. And then IE, or I'm sorry, it's EG, right? For example, EG,
Mhm.
you're just listing examples, not beholden to each one of these examples.
Yeah.
I don't,
I agree. I just, we could find that we have a coffee and it's really ineffective. And then or we have so fine. But
yeah, I
all,
mean, yeah. We're gonna, some of this is gonna be trial and error too.
yes,
I mean, we might have a coffee, no trial.
yes, yes. And we have that
It's
sometimes now with, we already do a fair amount. The district already does a fair number. Like, there was the big SEL meeting. There was Mark Brackett coming. There was, and those are sometimes well attended and sometimes not. So I agree with taking a look at the different mechanisms, but I just, I want to give us a little breathing
So are we
room.
good with the explore additional in-person opportunities, e.g.
Yes,
for the community to engage with the board and
Yeah.
and schools or administration, I guess is my question.
Community to engage.
Just,
yeah, which is not, so schools already do coffees and,
I would strike schools and change it
To
to.
engage with the community,
I'm sorry.
to engage with the community.
Okay, that's
Provide-
fine.
Explore
For the-
additional in-person opportunities to engage with the community.
Well, it's for the community to engage with the board and
I think, again, why we're struggling with this a little bit is the survey indicates administration and it indicates board.
Yes,
But we're not really sure what level of precision we're talking about. I think we can identify as board members that we would value more engagement in person and that we don't really have easy, this is such a formal mechanism. Anybody comes to public comment, we're just going to look at them. Right. And that's by the nature of a board. So we can identify that, but I don't know beyond the board, which is, I think, why we're kicking this one
The only
around.
other thing I guess you would say there potentially is, unless you don't want to say it, is just formally for the community to engage with the board and district administration. I mean, that's what otherwise we'd be silent about it.
That's my point, just. They're, in my mind, they're seeking increased engagement with both board members and members of the administration. on
Okay.
Certain subject matter, so let's, instead of schools, let's call it district administration or administration, okay?
So from what I can gather there, then, oh, sorry, did anybody want to talk about the complete the district communication plan, or is that just the nature of this work?
That's the nature of the work. I mean, it belongs there.
It belongs here.
I think so.
So they have their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from what I can read. I have the complete the communications plan. I have the additional in-person opportunities. The elementary communication about the buildings. Celebrate student and staff experiences. Alignment to the agenda to the board goals.
No, that's out.
I think that's out.
Oh, that was out?
That
Yeah,
goes somewhere
yeah.
else.
Aye, sorry. And then the policy committee reframed.
I think in listening, there's still an opportunity to roll some of it up. So what are we communicating? Just identifying that, being more strategic about our communication. And so that the things that we might highlight include staff and student experience, portrait of a graduate, and building committees. And those sound like maybe 3 of the high level priorities that would go under a more
Staff and, sorry, staff and district experiences, vision of the graduate, and
building committees as 3 things that would be communication priorities for the year.
Mhm.
So your goal is kind of to identify and execute on district, district, ensure that communication aligns with district priorities is really kind of where we're going.
Mhm.
Those are 3 bodies of work that the district would be prioritizing this year. One of them specific to communication,
Right, so you're.
the other 2 specific to other work.
So is that a sub, or are you saying one bullet with sub bullets?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, all right.
that's,
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
You probably have sorry, keep talking. You probably have there may be more than 3 that belong there, so you may just need a bullet that indicates that and other priorities.
I'll let the board tell me what those other ones are.
The point on the policy committee, making recommendations to the policy committee, that sounded very committee specific. I don't know that our goals are usually that specific to a committee's specific work. Let me say specific again. Consider recommendations to the full board for the policy committee, because these are the full board's goals. So do we want to rephrase that? So it's.
Yeah, he's gonna read it. Yeah.
To what?
Well, the board goals don't typically read as assignments to committees to make recommendations to the full board, because they're the full board's goals. So however, I would change that so that it's,
just to change the terminology. of that,
yes,
like,
change
why
the
don't we
way it's
just say,
stated.
consider recommendations
the
to
board-
identify policies and administrative regulations to support enhanced district communication.
Okay, that works. Just take out that. To the full board. To the policy committee. Excellent.
So,
Um,
so I would propose those as a first flush. And unless you want to go through the measures, I'll try and align measures that go along with some of those.
I think I would align measures that go along with those.
Mhm.
And the measures we go in with typically what the first quarter measures would look like, or do we go in with what the year end measures look like?
Well, typically for the proposal of the board, initial goals, I have the goals and the strategies, and I have the measurements that could be accomplished at any time.
Okay,
So I'm undetermined with certainly the first flush is undetermined with how quickly they'll be done or what time frame. But it's for the year, so.
okay.
Well, I think that is a good question. Where are you going to put any timeframes in the board goals?
I
Q1, Q2,
currently,
Q3,
I
Q4.
don't have the time other than that they're yearly goals, but
Mhm.
if the board says on Tuesday, I'd like to see, for the next flush, just some changes to the goals and additional timeframes for them. For the year, I mean, they have to plan for them or they don't get done, right?
Agreed.
So it's a reasonable, I'd like to do it a wee bit reflectively, then if that's the case, I'll recognize it was brought up here that.
So we can take that, the committee asked the question, would it make sense to do some sort of timeline like a Q1 through Q4 alongside the strategic work and the measures?
Well, instead of coming at like the first quarter, second quarter, whatever, for the updates, and you see what we did, we could delineate what should be expected by the first
Mhm,
quarter.
mhm.
Mhm. That makes sense. Okay, good. Anything else? Danny, you got anything?
unmute. Nothing for me.
That was hard.
Also helpful though, so it's certainly helpful to me, so.
That's the goal.
That is the
Not to
idea.
complicate things.
Okay, cool. And does that take us to our public comment?
Do we just want for a second, we don't have any more communications meetings planned for the summer, correct? So
Correct.
we would, just in terms of next steps, we're moving this over to the board and we will do the work
Board
that's
goals.
articulated
Mhm.
starting in September. Is that the plan? Okay,
That's the plan.
Okay.
Sorry, we talked about the meeting at the very beginning.
I'm so sorry.
No
Yes.
worries. We could have revisited that. Thank you. All right, Michelle, do we have any
Anyone
public
in
comment?
person would like to participate, please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Joanna Walsh, 17 Pleasant Street. Just two little thoughts. First, the focus groups, how are you forming them? What constituents are you putting in them? How many of them will there be able to, some more information on that would be helpful. And also just a quick fix for the website might be taking curriculum out of the departments tab and making it its own tab. So when you go to the website, it's right there in front of you instead of having to look for it.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
There are no more raised hands at this time.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. John, everyone.